Okay. Hi, Vicky. Thanks for joining me today. I am talking now to Victoria Pham, who has been co-curating, well, doing the bulk of the curating of this program, actually, the Thresholds program, which we're really looking forward to presenting at Backstage on the 4th of March, which is a Saturday. And Vicky and I are going to have a bit of a chat today about the program and what kind of has been behind her curation, who she's asked to be involved, and what people are doing. So welcome, Vicky.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for offering me this opportunity to co-curate with you, and I'm excited to talk about the program.
Yeah, I think it's been really lovely working with you. I think we started this whole process because of putting together a program because I saw this really fascinating post that you put up on Facebook about an article that you had written about Asian voices, particularly Asian faces in opera. And I was so impressed with your thinking and with the ideas that you were talking about that I wanted to have another conversation with you about that. So that's where this all started from. I wonder whether you can tell people a little bit about that article.
Sure. So that article that Lamorna is speaking about was written in 2021 and published then through a really cool and at the time a brand new publishing company, editorial company called Decolonial Hacker. And part of the article was supposed to be interrogating certain traditional or more conservative institutions in arts and culture in Australia and internationally. And for me, I wanted to write about Opera Australia because they're a company I grew up with. I'd gone to see operas at various times in my life. And as I got older and more involved in the classical music or contemporary classical music scene, I realized that there weren't many operas that were playing. I was often going to see the same thing or being offered the same thing. And in many cases, there were representations of people of color and particularly Asian faces when it comes to big operas like Madame Butterfly that were no longer considered authentic or considered probably not even correct or real. There were all these caricatures of people that were coming out of the 19th and early 20th century that we don't see in many other media forms like TV or film anymore, but it's still resonating in opera. So yeah, I wanted to know why that was still the case and why opera still persisted on this kind of archaic representation of Asian voices when in Australia itself we have such a diverse scene of Asian heritage, culture, tradition, and different performance practices that we could tap into. And these amazing performers, which you through this program have given us the chance to make space for and to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. There's so many people with such interesting things to say, and why we need to keep hearing the same voices over and over again. I don't really understand. As much as I love opera, yeah, there are other things out there that I think we can start to engage with. So,
I think so.
Hence this program that is called Thresholds and has turned out to perhaps be about things that are a little. I mean, I think that you've started to explore ideas of labyrinths and mazes, and that's maybe become a little bit more of the theme of this program. So maybe you can tell, I mean, I'm still a little bit up in the air about what's actually happening in the show because you've been doing such a great job of organising the artists that I have just kind of go, oh, excellent, Vicky, that sounds great. You seem to be totally on top of that. So great. But maybe you can share with everybody what's happening at the show without giving too much away, of course.
Oh, yes. Okay. Try to be mysterious.
Yeah.
The program is still called Thresholds, as
It
Lamorna
is.
mentioned. And that came out of two things. Firstly, from a poem by Ocean Vuong, who is this incredible Vietnamese American poet.
Oh, yeah.
Who's published lots of recent books. And one of his first ever poems in his first published collection of poetry is called Threshold. So it kind of comes out of that. But also at the beginning, when we first started talking about this over a year ago, we were thinking about how we could create space for people whose voices not sitting at a margin, but sit between two places. What it means to have an Australian and Asian experience, drawing from that heritage and how we can perform and showcase that to an Australian audience, a contemporary Australian audience. So Threshold kind of seemed like the right theme. And kind of from that place, each of the artists have kind of interpreted that in different ways. And Nicholas, for example, who is an Erhu performer and composer, who will be one of the artists, Nicholas, who is performing, is also interested in Chinese mythologies. And one of the mythologies and imagery that comes across a lot in his performances is labyrinth. So he's kind of drawing from Threshold place and bringing out and expanding on this mythology of labyrinth, which has actually inspired a lot of our other performers as well. So what I like about this process is that it's turned into this multi-collaborative thing between each of the four artists. So our emerging artist, who's a spoken word performer, Gloria DeMillo, has actually played off some of Nicholas's themes in Labyrinth and is writing her own brand new work for voice that's coming out of Nicholas's research into mythology and imagery. So it's quite cool because Gloria is going to start the performance and then Nicholas is going to wrap it up, and they both have this idea of labyrinth underpinning their works. And then we have two other performers, Chloe Chun, who plays flute, and a range of dizi, which is the Chinese bamboo flute. And she's also kind of dipping into word and poetry and performance, but I won't give away too much about her performance. And then we have Flora Wong, who's coming down from Brisbane, who plays violin, and whose work I've seen a couple of times, and she's going to showcase to the largest audience to date this current work she's working on, which is called Rice Wash, which plays with the sounds of the violin and the materiality of rice, which is something we use to consume, which is a regular staple in Asia, but also something that Flora shared recently is something that's actually used with luthiers to clean out violins, which is something I had no idea.
Oh,
so
really?
She's kind of joining these two worlds together, to make a new sonic performance.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I too really love the way that in the programs that we've been putting together recently, how all the artists have kind of engaged with each other and been creating new work that kind of speaks to each other's work. And I feel like that's like it's such a kind of strengthening of the community that kind of comes out of that. It's very powerful. And yeah, so I'm so excited about hearing these new works and meeting everybody together and actually having the opportunity for each of the artists to meet together in person, because I don't know that they'll get to do that before the actual gig, but they've certainly been communicating a lot and have learned a lot from each other, I'm sure. So that's going to be great to have them all together in person.
Yeah, it's incredible seeing how they want to make music together as well. So we'll see how that kind of unfolds for the performance.
Yeah. And James has also been creating some beautiful little films.
Yes. So James Newen is an artist and filmmaker based in Melbourne, and he's very cool. And so what he's been doing is, as the performance unfolds between these four kind of seemingly separate performances, even though there's been collaboration, we wanted to find a way to kind of weave together the whole night. It's this kind of fabric or quilt work, I suppose, of different voices. And then we settled on the best way to do that is to actually showcase the voices of the artists. So you hear them being presented and their voices in a kind of short interview film before each of their performances, so you don't just hear them through their instruments. So James has been the one person who's gone to actually meet everyone, has gone to film small sections and conversations that he's had with each of the artists about their practice and the work they're about to present. So that'll be one way that weaves everything together. And I've already seen them and they're beautiful. So
excellent. I'm sure they're very, very beautiful and creative. They're not just a kind of standalone interview. Yeah.
Yeah, they're beautifully shot. And yeah, a lot of it has the Australian landscape embedded in it. So it's quite beautiful.
Oh, fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with people before we wrap up this little conversation?
Not too much, except that if you haven't booked tickets, please do come along, and we hope that you experience like different ways of seeing and listening to objects that maybe you hadn't considered before, whether it's rice or the human voice or a lot of these traditional Asian instruments that will be showcased on the night. So please do come along, and you might even get to participate.
Oh,
Ooh.
fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. So once again, the Treshold gig is on the 4th of March. You can get your tickets through backstagemusic.com.au, and the show's in Waterloo, so right in kind of Redfern area, so it's very accessible. And I think that's probably about it. So we can keep talking, Vicky, but let's wrap it up as far as this little recording goes.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.